This Jack Dorsey tweet is making people go crazy, and let's talk about it. Web3. Who really owns Web3? So I saw this TikTok, and it got me thinking. It got my brain juices flowing. So let's vibe.
If you're on Twitter or you're on the Web3 or NFT side of TikTok, there's a good chance you saw this tweet this morning. For context, Jack here is the founder of Twitter, the former CEO of Twitter as of, I don't know, like he quit, a month ago. And he's also the CEO of Square, the payment app, and has done a bunch of other stuff. Now, this tweet here, where he says, you don't own Web3, came as a big bombshell to a lot of people in the Web3 world. It shouldn't have, though, because this is not some revolutionary statement. This is what a lot of us have been talking about for a long time. Let's dissect this. So he says, you don't own Web3. You meaning you. If you're on TikTok and you're talking about Web3, he is referring specifically to you. He says, the VCs and their LPs do. So that is the venture capitalists and their limited partners. The reason why he's saying this is because all the Web3 components, all the platforms you're using to make your NFTs, all the wallets you're putting your NFTs and your cryptocurrencies in and everything else are owned by the same venture capitalists that are owning everything in Web 2. And they're going to do the exact same thing to Web 3 that they did with Web 2. And that is.
So here I have to agree with him on this. It's even beyond just your platforms that you're selling your NFTs on, whether it's OpenSea, whether it's crypto.com, all these different platforms. But even beyond that, when you actually think about cryptocurrency, people actually created them, right? People are creating cryptocurrencies, right? And so they own those. So imagine an individual owning a currency as opposed to like a government owning it, right? So that's where it gets interesting, right? Everything from crypto, which is owned by individuals, to your platforms like Shopify's. Think about it, like, so for example, I know Shopify is going to start allowing people create like NFT marketplaces. There are other sites as well, like NFTFi, that allows you to create an NFT marketplace, quote unquote NFT marketplace, but you're paying a monthly subscription to these platforms, and they are the ones that sort of own these NFT sites, right? And if anything happens to those websites, like maybe they go under or whatever, what then happens to these NFTs? What happens? And that's the big question.
Centralized control through monetary control. And this is what he's addressing. Now, on the off chance you're following me on TikTok or on Twitter or anywhere else, you know that I've been speaking quite loudly about how Web3 isn't ready yet. And that when people talk about Web3, they're actually just talking about cryptocurrencies, and that's not really what Web3 is.
I disagree, because when you say Web3, what we're talking about the metaverse, we're talking about crypto, DeFi, we're talking about sort of like Web3 and the metaverse are sort of these like abstract terms that refer to these new technologies that either have emerged in the last 10 years or that are emerging with the whole metaverse space. I think earlier I wouldn't have like associated the metaverse with Web3, but when you look at how sophisticated the metaverse is right now, and your ability to use it, its functionality, I think it is part of Web3. So I would not go as far to define it in that way, but I think Web3 is just sort of this umbrella term talking about the way technology and media, or social media technology, all of that, where it's moving. But before we get into that, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. It really pushes this video out in the algorithm and encourages me to make more videos. This video is brought to you by Brand Video Pro. We help brands and influencers scale their influence and sales. So if that is useful to you, head on over to our website, click the link down below, and find out how we can help you. You can book a one-on-one consultation with me. You can buy our course, the Members Lab, and we have so many more resources. So go on and check that out. All right, let's begin.
There's a reason why me and other olds like me talk about this a lot, and it's because we've seen this thing happen before. And I know when old people say, oh, I've seen this before, and you young people just don't know what you're talking about.
He's not old. He can't be more than like 38, maybe 40 max. It's so interesting to me when people refer to people like, I know, like, to an 18-year-old, you see someone that's like 30 and you're like, they're old. But when you think about it in like, in the fact that like most people live until they're 80 years old, being like 40, that's half of your life. That's not old at all. But it's about perspective. And some people are living to 100 now. People live till 100. People live up to like they're 100. So if you're like 40 and you're going to live to 100, or if you're like 30, you're going to live to 100, that's 70 years. That's 60 more years that you have alive. How is that old? Like, think about the agility of your body right now, your functionality, your brain capacity, and when you think about when are you in your prime in terms of your brain capacity and your physicality, the combination of both, that's from your 30s, maybe up to like your 50s, your mid 50s, when you have the potential to have the best like physical, mentally as well. Because before that, before 25, your frontal lobe hasn't developed, and you're only just like now catching up from 25 to 30. And so by 30, that's when you're your sharpest mind, your most, and when you combine that with your physical fitness at 30, that combination from 30 to, I think, about 40, like I'll say 45, 50 for those that work out and stay in shape, maybe 55 for those that really stay in shape. But yeah, anyway, when people say that, oh, you're old when you're 40 or 38, it's ridiculous.
There's an automatic pushback. I remember I was young once and I said the same thing. But this might be something you want to listen to, because what we're saying isn't that what Web3 people are doing now is stupid. What we're saying is we got royally fucked by these people. We got royally fucked by capitalism. And capitalism destroyed our ideals and destroyed Web2. And unless you're careful...
The idea that capitalism destroyed Web 2. I've talked about this, in a few videos where I talk about where I talk about Facebook. Let me just give the little spiel very quickly, very briefly, if you haven't seen those videos. But the way capitalism destroyed Web 2 is that because Web 2 is free, and Web 2 refers to social media and that era, right? This era that we're kind of in, but we're now in more of a Web 3 space. But Web 2 is like the emergence of social media and the development of social media, right? And that Web 2 era, all of these media forms were free. Like we're coming out of television, like the prevalence of television, and now everybody's on social media and it's all free. So what does that mean? How do these internet companies make money when all this stuff is free? They put ads on their platforms, and now this putting ads on their platforms means that we now become the product, and they sell our data to these ad companies, right? And so that's kind of what he means by we were royally screwed by Web 2. I don't know if I would define it that way, because there are pros and cons. Because the thing about Web 2 is that they're giving you this access. They're building superior technology to give you access, and that enables you to connect with people, connect with people that you haven't seen in years, it just connect with people, right? It gives it gives you access to information, right? So what is the downfall in them selling your data? But we have seen examples of where this was terrible, like where, it's causing depression with younger kids, or where it's being exploited in governments. Like for example, being exploited in countries like during the elections, like the whole way that Donald Trump got elected and ruined America is probably, a lot of people attribute that to Cambridge Analytica and Facebook being manipulated to allow people to use their platform, and allowing Cambridge Analytica to take advantage of their platform and spread fake news. So that's one component, right? And then there are other things that are happening right now with Web 2, the influencing, wars, riots, all of that. So these are the disadvantages of the Web 2 era that have sort of screwed us. I guess you could say Donald Trump becoming president did screw us. But ultimately, what's the setback, right? Are you willing to give up your access to instant information? Are you willing to give up your ability to connect with every and anyone in the world? I mean, people have gotten so many jobs from this. People have built relationships through social media. Are you willing to give that up because you don't like the capitalistic agenda? And the real question is, without capitalism, would these platforms have performed as successfully? Where's the motivation and where's the drive to innovate without capitalism? You know, and so I think we have to be very careful complaining about capitalism, because I mean, look, I understand that capitalism is a double-edged sword. There's pros and there are cons. The foundation and the building of capitalism is very closely linked to white supremacy and closely linked to slavery. America would not be the country it is today without having free labor from, you know, West African slaves for 300-400 years. So America would not be what it is today without free labor from blacks, right? So that's one component. That's the dark underbelly, dark, nasty history of capitalism. But am I going to say that what capitalism is today has screwed us? Well, then it goes back to my question. Is it worth giving up all the things that Web 2 gave us to go in another direction against capitalism? Because like when you look at other countries that have been as driven as America, when you look at China, you know, is that what you want? Is that an option? What do the Chinese people call themselves? I can't remember. Chinese government, they're not the Chinese Communist Party is in charge. I can't remember. I'll put it down what they refer to themselves as, but either way, we know the Chinese Communist Party is ruling China. And so is that the solution? I don't think so. I think capitalism, at the very least, it allows freedom to those who have the most proximity to whiteness, which is a terrible component, but also to those that are at the top of the hierarchy. They are allowed to have freedom. But ultimately, even those at the bottom of the barrel in capitalism still have the freedom to walk around and say what they want and do what they want, for the most part. So I'm not someone that's going to be against capitalism. Okay, let me keep going.
The Web3 community is marching directly into the exact same traps, and the exact same thing is going to happen. Here's the very simple truth. The whole selling point of Web3 is no centralization. We take back control of the web. But right now, the way Web3 is being used is specifically centralized control by the people who have the most money, and NFTs and cryptocurrencies being used for currency speculation. So all the people that we're trying to grab the web away from are the ones that are most heavily...
So I've had this conversation in other videos. Yes, Web3's illusion of decentralizing situations is a lie. And I've said this time and time again. People have said they want to shift hands. They want the hands of power to shift from the old to the new. And that's what's happening in Web 3. Like, I would say in Web 2 is when it started emerging. Web 3, it's happening. And so who has the power and who is the power going to? When you look at crypto, you're saying the power is going from governments' ownership of currency, and it's now going into cryptocurrency. Now the question is, who owns cryptocurrencies? And it's people, regular people. So you're taking away power from governments and you're putting it into the hands of people that you do not know, right? You don't know them personally. You don't know their ideals. You don't know their goals in life. You don't know if they want to destroy the world. You don't know what they want to do. These are regular people that you're putting all these cryptocurrencies in the hands of. Like, I remember this YouTuber created a cryptocurrency, and I'm just going to plug a few things where he made a killing. And he put systems in place to ensure that he didn't have control over the currency. But ultimately, who's to say that he couldn't take control over it again, right? So the idea here is like, when it comes to crypto, you're putting power into the hands of people that were not elected into office. They just created this interesting technology. And yes, I understand the importance of making sure power shifts hands. It's such an important thing, like, and it creates so many opportunities, and it seems like it's a revolution. But when it comes down to it, when you look at history and you look at human behavior, a lot of times you'll find that when power is shifting hands, it's going from one devil to another devil, one demon to another demon. And so who's to say that this whole rush to crypto is going to be the real way that's sustainable, or that is better? Taking money away from governments who are elected to control the world, they've been elected for the most part. You're putting it into hands of local citizens to do what they want with it. These local citizens could be mad scientists for all you know, and they want to kill the world. Who knows? And just to conclude, not even just crypto as an example, just the powers, the global powers, or the big tech giants, big tech entrepreneurs. You're putting all the power into their hands, shifting it from government, putting it into people like Mark Zuckerberg, people like Tim Cook. You're putting it into the hands of what's his name? Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. Jeff Bezos. These are the people that we're handing power to. Individuals, citizens that could decide tomorrow that they want to buy a massive nuclear bomb and explode the world. I don't know. And what's interesting to me is if you watch the movie Don't Look Up, they had an interesting character that sort of like represented the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook type of entrepreneur who actually enabled, well, I'm not going to spoil the movie for you, but he did some terrible things. And why are we putting our trust in these people? Because Forbes says they're the richest people in the world. Capitalism makes you glorify and praise people just because they have money. It tells you that someone that's rich is superior, worthy, or whatever. But let me keep going. Let me just finish this off.
Be invested in what is currently being referred to as Web3. And unless the Web3 community learns from the mistakes of the Web2 community, meaning us olds, and actually listen to us, the same thing is just going to happen here too.
I don't necessarily agree, because the only way that anybody can control Web3 is if they have one of two things, or both things. Number one is a lot of money so they can create the next Facebook. That's the only way that you're going to be put in a position to dominate. And even in that way, you're just going to be another billionaire CEO that's taking power away from the government or away from people. And who says you're still going to be a tool of capitalism to move your own personal agenda? So how is that any better, right, than the guys that were running Web 2? That's one way. The second way, apart from money, is if you don't have money, you have to have a lot of time, and you have to know how to write code and create the next whatever. And probably, I don't know if that's even going to be possible in the metaverse space, because there's hardware involved in that. But in terms of the NFT, creating an NFT marketplace, all of that, you need to know how to write code and do all of that yourself. So those are the two things that you need to do to be able to dominate in Web 3. And if you don't have that, well, you're going to have to go the route of following the Web 2 route and going to these third-party companies like the Shopifys to create your NFT marketplace or whatever. Like, I understand what he's saying. It's an interesting thing to point out. It's an interesting thing to put into people's minds so they can think about how to change the landscape. But when it comes down to it, you have no chance at dominating this landscape unless you have those two things. One of those two things: a lot of money so you can pay for people to code for you, or or the ability to code yourself and a lot of time so you can do it yourself. And either way, even if you have those two things, you're still going to be a tool of capitalism, unless of course you decide to be the messiah and change the way, which is probably unlikely. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the above. My name is Kenim, and see you next time. A peace.